July 1559. The Louvre Palace is draped entirely in black. Black silk hangings on every wall. Black candles in every sconce. Black clothing on every courtier. The entire palace has become a temple of mourning, and at its center stands Catherine de Medici. She's 40 years old. She's been Queen of France for 15 years, but she's never held real power. Her husband, King Henry II, kept her marginalized, preferring his mistress, the beautiful, powerful Diane de Poitiers, in all matters of state. Catherine was the wife for legitimacy, for producing heirs. Diane was the partner for everything else. But 10 days ago, everything changed. Henry died. Not gloriously in battle, not peacefully in old age, but stupidly, pointlessly, in a jousting tournament celebrating his daughter's wedding. A lance splintered. A piece of wood penetrated through his helmet, through his eye, into his brain. He lingered for 11 days in agony before dying. And now Catherine is standing before a window overlooking Paris, dressed in the black mourning clothes she will wear for the remaining 30 years of her life, and she's calculating. The inheritance. What has she inherited? A kingdom on the brink of collapse. Her eldest surviving son, Francis II, is now king. He's 15 years old. He's sickly, undersized, possibly developmentally delayed. He's completely dominated by his wife Mary Stuart, Mary Queen of Scots, and her uncles from the powerful Guise family. They're ultra-Catholic, ambitious, and they see Catherine as an obstacle. France itself is tearing apart. The Protestant Reformation has divided the kingdom. Huguenots, French Protestants, are gaining converts among the nobility and urban populations. The Catholic majority, led by the Guise family and supported by Spain, sees Protestantism as heresy requiring extermination. Both sides are armed. Both sides are forming military alliances. Both sides are preparing for civil war. Catherine has no army of her own. She has limited political allies. She's a foreigner, Italian, from the Medici banking family of Florence. The French nobility has never accepted her. They call her the Italian woman, the shopkeeper's daughter, despite her royal blood. They mock her accent, her Italian fashions, her lack of traditional French nobility. She has wealth. She has intelligence. She has 30 years of watching French court politics from the sidelines, learning how power actually works beneath the ceremonies and declarations. And she has an insight that will define her reign. In a world where men control armies, laws, and land, women control something else. They control access, intimacy, secrets shared in darkness. The Florentine education. Catherine wasn't raised to be a French queen. She was orphaned young. Her father, Lorenzo de' Medici, Duke of Urbino, died when she was infant. Her mother died shortly after. She was raised in convents and Medici palaces in Florence, educated by nuns and humanist scholars. She learned things aristocratic French girls never learned: mathematics, astronomy, philosophy. She learned about poisons and medicines. The line was blurry in Renaissance Italy. She learned about banking, about how money creates power more reliably than blood. And she learned about sprezzatura, the Italian concept of performing ease while concealing effort, of making difficult things look effortless, of wielding power while appearing powerless. She's going to need all of it now. The decision. Catherine makes a choice in those first days of widowhood, standing in her black-draped chambers. She will not fight the French nobility with masculine weapons. She cannot command armies. She cannot rally nobles through displays of martial strength. She cannot operate through traditional channels of male authority. So she'll create new channels. Unconventional channels. Channels that exploit the one thing the French nobility values almost as much as military prowess: chivalric romance. Courtly love. The elaborate game of seduction that dominates aristocratic culture. The French nobility believes in honor and love, in the idea that beautiful women are prizes to be won, that intimacy creates bonds stronger than political alliance. Catherine is going to weaponize that belief. She's going to create an intelligence network unlike anything Europe has seen. Not spies who lurk in shadows and steal documents, but beautiful noble women who seduce powerful men, who extract secrets through pillow talk, who turn intimate relationships into espionage operations. She's going to build an army, and the soldiers will be women, and the battlefield will be the bedchamber. They will call it Squadron Volant, the flying squadron, an army of seduction, the first organized female intelligence service in European history. The first recruits. Catherine begins immediately. She identifies young noblewomen at court, daughters of lesser nobility, women with beauty but limited prospects, women who need Catherine's patronage. She also identifies older women, widows, courtesans, women who already understand how to navigate court politics, how to use beauty and wit as currency. And she offers them a deal: serve France. Serve me. Use your beauty, your intelligence, your access to powerful men to extract information. Prevent wars. Save thousands of lives. And I will reward you with wealth, position, protection. Some accept enthusiastically. Some reluctantly. Some are coerced. When the Queen Mother invites your daughter to serve, refusal is difficult. But one way or another, Catherine begins assembling her squadron. Beautiful women. Intelligent women. Women willing to sacrifice their reputations, their futures, their capacity for genuine intimacy, all for France. Or for Catherine. The line between the two becomes deliberately blurred. Within a year, the flying squadron is operational. Approximately 80 women, varying in age and rank, all reporting directly to Catherine, all trained in the arts of seduction and espionage. And France has no idea what's about to hit it. The private apartments of the Louvre, 1560. A salon that appears, to casual observers, to be simply a gathering place for young noblewomen, a finishing school where they learn courtly refinement under the Queen Mother's patronage. But look closer. Listen to the conversations. Notice what's actually being taught. This is the recruitment and training center for the flying squadron. And the curriculum is unlike anything taught in any legitimate ladies' academy. The selection process. Catherine interviews each potential recruit personally. The meetings are private, direct, surprisingly honest. Mademoiselle, Catherine says to a nervous 18-year-old daughter of minor nobility, I am not asking you to be a whore. Let me be very clear about that. What I am asking is more difficult and more dangerous. The girl shifts uncomfortably. She's heard rumors about what the Queen Mother wants, but hearing it directly is different. Catherine continues, France is burning. Men start these wars, Protestant and Catholic, Guise and Bourbon, honor and pride and theological arguments that kill thousands. But men also have weaknesses. Predictable weaknesses. They fall in love. They trust beautiful women who flatter their egos. They reveal secrets in moments of intimacy that they would never reveal in council chambers. She leans forward, her black widow's weeds making her seem like a crow delivering prophecy. You can exploit those weaknesses. You can save lives. Prevent battles. Extract information that allows me to outmaneuver the factions pushing for war. But it will cost you everything. Your reputation, your chances at respectable marriage, your capacity for genuine love, because you will perform love so often you may forget what the real thing feels like. I am asking you to be a patriot, and I am asking you to sacrifice in ways that will make history despise you. She pauses. The girl is pale, trembling slightly. But I will remember, and I will reward you. You will have my protection, my wealth, my gratitude. When this is over, you will be rich, positioned, safe. If you survive. If you maintain your sanity. If you can live with what you'll have to do. Catherine sits back. Think carefully. Once you accept, there is no leaving. Your first mission will compromise you completely. No respectable family will accept you after. Your only security will be through me. Do you understand? Some girls refuse. They leave the meeting, return to their families, are quietly married off to provincial nobles and disappear from court. But many accept, because the alternative, life as a minor noblewoman with no prospects, no power, no future beyond producing heirs for some country lord, seems worse than the danger Catherine describes. And some accept because they want it, because they're ambitious, intelligent, and frustrated by a world that offers women no path to power except through men. The Squadron offers something else: direct influence, engagement with politics and war, matching. The curriculum. Training begins immediately for accepted recruits. And it's comprehensive. Languages: Italian, Catherine's native tongue, useful for coded conversations. Spanish, for dealing with Spanish ambassadors and nobles. Latin, for understanding theological debates crucial to the wars of religion. Some women learn basic German or English. Theological debate. This is crucial. The wars of religion are fought over doctrinal differences, transubstantiation, predestination, papal authority, justification by faith versus works. Squadron members must be able to discuss these topics intelligently to appear sympathetic to Protestant or Catholic views depending on the target, to ask questions that reveal political allegiances disguised as religious conviction. Music and dance. Essential for attending balls and entertainments where squadron members encounter targets. But also strategic. Dancing allows physical proximity, creates excuses for whispered conversations, provides cover for passing messages. Memory techniques. Squadron members must remember conversations verbatim, must recall names and faces, must retain complex political information without writing anything down. Written intelligence can be discovered. Catherine teaches Renaissance memory palace techniques, visualizing elaborate mental spaces where information is stored spatially. Reading people, how to identify when someone is lying. How to spot political faction allegiances through subtle signals, religious jewelry, clothing colors, the company they keep. How to recognize when a target is becoming emotionally attached versus simply playing along. Wine tolerance. Squadron members must be able to appear drunk while staying sober, to encourage targets to drink heavily while maintaining their own clarity. They practice at the training sessions, elaborate dinners where wine flows freely, where they learn to fake intoxication while cataloging everything said. The art of strategic intimacy. This is never made explicit. Catherine doesn't lecture on sexual technique, but through indirect guidance, through conversations with older squadron members, through observation of what works, the younger women learn how to make a man feel like the most important person in the world, how to create emotional dependency, how to extract information through vulnerability rather than interrogation. The key figures. Among the approximately 80 squadron members, several become legendary. Isabelle de Lemuel, 20 years old, daughter of minor nobility. Beautiful, vivacious, fearless. She will be the squadron's first major deployment and its first tragedy. Charlotte de Beaune-Semblanque, Baroness de Sauve. Mid-20s, already married to a compliant baron who tolerates her activities. Coolly calculating, utterly ruthless, completely loyal to Catherine. She will become the squadron's most successful and longest-serving operative. Louise de la Berdière, Dame de Ruse. Slightly older, experienced. She'll be assigned to the most difficult Protestant targets, the ones who can't be seduced through simple beauty. Renée de Ruse, Marquise de Beaupre. In her 30s, widowed, sophisticated. She's the squadron's mature operator, assigned to older, warier targets. These women, and dozens of others whose names are lost or recorded only in fragments, will become the unseen force shaping French politics for the next 3 decades. The philosophy. Catherine frames the Squadron's work not as prostitution but as patriotic sacrifice. And she genuinely believes this. In her mind, she's using the only weapons available to her. Men control armies, laws, land, but women control something more immediate: vulnerability. Everyone needs intimacy, trust, someone to confide in. The Squadron provides that, and exploits it. Is it moral? Catherine doesn't ask. Morality is a luxury for people not trying to prevent their kingdom from collapsing into civil war. Is it effective? Absolutely. Within years, the Flying Squadron will be Catherine's most valuable intelligence asset. More useful than any spy network, any diplomatic corps, any advisory council. Because men tell their lovers things they tell no one else. And Catherine's lovers are all reporting back to her. The First War of Religion has just ended with the Peace of Amboise, but tensions remain high. The Protestant cause has a charismatic, dangerous leader, Louis de Bourbon, Prince de Condé. Condé is everything Catherine fears. He's royal, descended from King Louis IX, with a legitimate claim to influence. He's militarily competent. He's led Protestant forces with surprising success. He's politically savvy. He's building alliances with German Protestant princes and English support. And he's just arrived at court for negotiations. This is Catherine's chance. And she assigns her newest operative to neutralize him. The target, Louis de Bourbon, Prince de Condé, is 30 years old. He's short, slight of build, which bothers him. He compensates with bravado and military aggression. He's married, but his marriage is political and unhappy. He's Protestant by conviction, not just political convenience, which makes him more dangerous because he can't be bought off with Catholic concessions. He's also susceptible to flattery, to beautiful women, to the courtly love traditions that dominate aristocratic culture. He sees himself as a knight-errant, defender of the Protestant faith. Catherine sees weakness she can exploit. The operative, Isabelle de Limuel, is 21 years old. She's been in the Squadron for less than a year, but Catherine has identified her as promising. She's extraordinarily beautiful, dark hair, pale skin, the kind of beauty that makes men forget they have duties elsewhere. She's also intelligent, witty, able to discuss theology and politics without seeming threateningly educated. And she's eager to prove herself. This is her first major assignment. She wants to show Catherine she made the right choice recruiting her. Catherine briefs her personally. The Prince de Condé is dangerous because he genuinely believes in his cause. He can't be bribed. He can't be threatened. But he can be distracted. He can be compromised. Make him need you. Make him depend on you. Extract information about Protestant military plans, foreign alliances, which nobles are wavering. And if possible, create scandal that weakens his political position. Isabelle accepts the mission. And the seduction begins. The campaign. It starts subtly. Isabelle positions herself at events where Condé will be present. She's not obvious. Doesn't approach him directly, doesn't flirt aggressively. Instead, she allows herself to be noticed. Catches his eye across a room. Smiles slightly before looking away. The courtly love tradition requires men to pursue, women to be pursued. Isabelle understands this. She creates the impression of being attainable but not easy, interested but not desperate. At a ball, she dances near where Condé is standing. He notices, requests the next dance. She accepts graciously, performs brilliantly, engages him in conversation about poetry, not politics, not religion, just art. She demonstrates wit without threatening his masculine authority. He's intrigued, requests another dance. She demurs. She's promised to someone else, but perhaps tomorrow? The refusal makes him want her more. Over weeks, the relationship develops. Carefully, strategically, Isabel demonstrates enough interest to encourage him but enough restraint to make conquest feel meaningful. She asks about his Protestant faith with genuine curiosity, not hostility. She presents herself as sympathetic, troubled by Catholic corruption, seeking spiritual truth. Condé begins to see her as different from other court ladies. More genuine, more understanding, someone he can trust. Which is exactly what Isabel wants him to think. The intimacy. When they finally become lovers, months into the operation, it's because Condé believes it was his idea. His pursuit. His conquest. Isabel lets him believe this. Because men who think they're conquerors reveal more than men who know their targets. In bed, after intimacy, when defenses are lowest, Condé talks. About Protestant strategy. About which Catholic nobles might be bribed to switch sides. About German princes sending troops and money. About English Queen Elizabeth's promises of support. Isabel listens. Asks intelligent questions that don't sound like interrogation. How fascinating, she murmurs. And do you trust the German princes? They've betrayed French allies before. Making it seem like curiosity, like concern for his safety, not intelligence gathering. Condé tells her everything. Because he's in love. Because she makes him feel understood. Because 30 years of masculine authority has conditioned him to see beautiful women as prizes, not threats. Every conversation is reported back to Catherine. Every detail of Protestant military plans. Every name of wavering nobles. Every foreign alliance. Catherine uses this intelligence to outmaneuver Condé repeatedly. Nobles he thought were secure suddenly reaffirm Catholic loyalty. Foreign support he expected doesn't materialize. His military campaigns fail because Catherine knows his strategy in advance. And Condé never suspects. Because he trusts Isabel. The complication. But something goes wrong. Something Isabel didn't plan, Catherine didn't anticipate, the squadron training didn't prepare for. Isabel falls in love. What begins as performance becomes real. Condé is charismatic, passionate, genuinely devoted to his cause. He treats Isabel not as conquest but as partner. He values her intelligence, asks her opinion, treats her with respect that court life rarely offers women. She starts to care. Really care. Not just performing care but actually feeling it. And then she becomes pregnant. The catastrophe. Pregnancy is disaster for a squadron operative. It's proof of the relationship, creates scandal, makes the operation visible. Catherine is furious when she learns. Isabel was supposed to be careful, was supposed to prevent this. But Isabel is naive. She believes Condé loves her. That he'll protect her. Maybe even marry her despite the scandal. She's wrong. When the pregnancy becomes public, Condé abandons her immediately. His Protestant allies are horrified. Their moral leader committing adultery with a Catholic courtesan undermines everything they claim to stand for. Condé denies the child, questions paternity, returns to his forces. Isabel is left alone. Pregnant. Disgraced. The subject of vicious gossip across France. Catherine uses the scandal politically. It does weaken Condé's position, creates useful propaganda about Protestant hypocrisy. The mission succeeds in its objectives. But Isabel pays the price. October 1563. Isabel goes into labor. Childbirth in the 16th century is dangerous even for healthy women with best medical care. For a woman who's been stressed, traumatized, abandoned, it's often fatal. Isabel dies in childbirth. She's 23 years old. The child dies with her. The official record says natural childbirth complications. But rumors spread, poison. Arranged accident. Catherine eliminating a compromised agent who knew too much. We'll never know. But the message to the rest of the squadron is clear. Emotional attachment is weakness. Falling in love with your target is potentially fatal. The work requires emotional control that most humans cannot maintain. Isabelle de Limuel becomes the squadron's first confirmed casualty. She won't be the last. The Second War of Religion is brewing. Catherine faces a new crisis. Her son, King Charles IX, is falling under the influence of Admiral Gaspard de Coligny, the Protestant military commander. Coligny is different from the younger, more impulsive Protestant leaders. He's 48 years old, disciplined, devout, married with children, uncorruptible through normal means. And he's brilliant, one of the best military minds in France. He's also extremely dangerous to Catherine. He's advising Charles IX to launch a military campaign against Spain to support Protestant rebels in the Netherlands. This would bankrupt France, empower Protestants, and completely sideline Catherine's influence. Catherine needs intelligence on Coligny's true plans and, if possible, needs to compromise him or his network. But this is the squadron's most difficult assignment yet. Coligny can't be seduced through simple beauty or youthful flirtation. So Catherine assigns her most experienced operative, Renée de Reuze, Marquise de Beaupre. The operative. Renée is in her mid-30s. She's been widowed twice. Her first husband died in battle, her second from illness. She has the sophistication that comes from real-life experience, the gravitas that younger squadron members lack. She's also genuinely religious. She understands Catholic theology deeply, which will be crucial for this operation. And she's capable of patience. This won't be a quick seduction. This will be a years-long infiltration. The strategy. Renée doesn't try to seduce Coligny sexually. She's smart enough to recognize that would fail immediately. Coligny is famous for his austere Protestant piety. He's not visiting courtesans, not susceptible to obvious feminine wiles. Instead, Renée positions herself as a potential convert. A Catholic noblewoman troubled by corruption in the church, drawn to Protestant theology's simplicity and emphasis on Scripture. She starts attending Protestant services, quietly, in private homes where Huguenots gather. She asks intelligent questions, demonstrates knowledge of the Bible, expresses genuine spiritual seeking, or at least, very convincing performance of spiritual seeking. Protestant leaders are always eager for high-ranking converts, especially Catholic noblewomen whose conversion might influence husbands, brothers, sons. They welcome Renée, introduce her to their network, eventually introduce her to Coligny. The infiltration. Coligny meets Renée and sees what she wants him to see, a sincere seeker. Someone genuinely troubled by Catholic corruption, genuinely drawn to Protestant faith. Not a sexual threat, not a seductress, but a potential sister in faith. He begins instructing her in Protestant theology, recommending texts, discussing Scripture. She's an excellent student, attentive, thoughtful, asking questions that make him think she's intellectually engaged rather than gathering intelligence. Over months, she becomes part of his inner circle. Not as a lover, but as a confidant. Someone he trusts enough to discuss strategy with. Someone whose opinion he values. And from that position she learns everything. The intelligence. Through Renée, Catherine learns. Which Catholic nobles are secretly sympathetic to Protestants, which cities will support a Protestant uprising, what foreign powers are providing money and arms to Huguenots. Coligny's detailed plans for the Spanish Netherlands campaign. But most crucially, Renée discovers something catastrophic. Protestant leaders are planning a coup. They're going to kidnap King Charles IX at Meaux, remove him from Catholic advisors, and install a Protestant-dominated regency. This intelligence allows Catherine to act. She evacuates Charles IX from Meaux just hours before the kidnapping attempt, foiling the Protestant plan and triggering the Second War of Religion. The operation is a complete success. René has penetrated the highest levels of Protestant leadership, extracted critical intelligence, prevented a coup. But there's a cost. The complication. René has spent 2 years embedded in the Protestant community, attending their services, reading their theology, discussing faith with people who genuinely believe, who demonstrate courage and principle. And she's developed respect, maybe even sympathy. Coligny isn't the monster Catholic propaganda portrays. He's not fighting for power or wealth. He's genuinely trying to end religious persecution, to create space for Protestant worship, to stop the cycle of violence. The people she's infiltrated aren't heretics deserving death. They're families, mothers, children, people who want to worship according to conscience. René completes her mission, delivers the intelligence, enables Catherine to foil the coup. But afterward, she requests release from squadron service. She retires to her estates, refuses further assignments. Catherine allows it, because Catherine understands René is compromised, not by betrayal but by empathy. She's seen too much humanity in the enemy. Push her further, and she might break entirely, or worse, switch sides. René de Beaupre lives another 30 years, dying in 1596. But she never returns to court, never speaks publicly about her squadron service, takes her secrets to the grave. The lesson. René's story illustrates the squadron's deepest problem. Effective infiltration requires empathy. You must understand your targets, see the world through their eyes, recognize their humanity. But empathy breeds sympathy. Sympathy breeds hesitation. And hesitation makes you ineffective or dangerous. The best spies maintain emotional distance. But emotional distance makes relationships unconvincing. It's an impossible balance. René walked away because she couldn't maintain it. Other squadron members will break in different ways. But almost all of them will break eventually. Because the work Catherine demands requires being simultaneously human enough to connect and cold enough to betray. And very few people can sustain that contradiction indefinitely. If the flying squadron had a field commander, it would be Charlotte de Beaune-Semblanque, Baroness de Sauve. She's everything Catherine needs: beautiful, intelligent, ruthless, and utterly loyal. She's also about to undertake the most complex double operation in squadron history. The problem? By 1570, Catherine faces a new crisis. Her youngest son, François, Duke of Alençon, is conspiring against her. He's the fourth son. Francis II died young. Charles IX is current king. Henry, Duke of Anjou, is next in line. Alençon is frustrated, bitter, plotting with Protestant nobles to seize power. Meanwhile, Henry of Navarre, Protestant prince, married to Catherine's daughter Margot in a political alliance, is also a potential threat. If he unites Protestant forces under his leadership, he could challenge the crown. Catherine needs both men neutralized. Simultaneously, permanently. She assigns Charlotte de Sauve to seduce both of them. Keep them distracted, suspicious of each other, unable to form stable alliance. It's an operation that will consume the next 12 years of Charlotte's life. The operative. Charlotte is in her mid-20s. She's been married young to the Baron de Sauve, a minor noble who either tolerates or is ignorant of her squadron activities. She's been in Catherine's service for years, executing several successful smaller operations. She's also the squadron's coldest member. Where Isabelle was passionate and René was empathetic, Charlotte is calculating. She performs emotion brilliantly, but there's no evidence she actually feels it. She's the perfect operative precisely because she's psychologically capable of maintaining the performance indefinitely without emotional compromise. Catherine briefs her, "I need both men under control." Alasah is easy, he's desperate for affection, physically unattractive from smallpox scars, emotionally vulnerable. Navarre is more complex. He's intelligent, genuinely loves his wife, cautious. But he's also young, male, and far from home. Both can be managed. Keep them competing for you. Make them jealous of each other. Ensure they can never trust each other enough to form lasting alliance. Charlotte accepts the mission. And for the next decade, she will be the most powerful woman in French politics, because she controls two of its most dangerous men. The Duke of Alasah. François, Duke of Alasah, is 20 years old in 1570. He's short, scarred by smallpox, physically unattractive by aristocratic standards. He's also bitter at being fourth son, bitter at being excluded from power, bitter at his mother's preference for his brother Henry. Charlotte approaches him with perfect calculation. She doesn't pretend he's handsome, he'd see through that lie. Instead, she recognizes his intelligence, his ambition, his capacity for greatness that his family refuses to see. She makes him feel understood, valued, important. Alasah falls completely. For the first time in his life, a beautiful woman sees past his scarred face to the man beneath. Or at least, she performs seeing that brilliantly. Within months, they're lovers. Alasah is besotted. He confides everything. His plots with Protestant nobles, his ambitions for an independent principality, his resentment of his family. Charlotte reports everything to Catherine, who uses the intelligence to dismantle Alasah's conspiracies before they mature, to arrest his co-conspirators, to keep him perpetually off balance and dependent. Henry of Navarre. Henry of Navarre is a more complex target. He's married to Marguerite de Valois, Catherine's daughter, called Margot, and by many accounts, he genuinely loves her. He's also intelligent, wary, aware that Catherine hates him. But he's also 20 years old, far from his Protestant base in southern France, essentially a hostage at the French court after the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, which will reach soon. He's isolated, wary, but also human. Charlotte positions herself as sympathetic, as someone who understands his position, as perhaps the one beautiful woman at court who isn't immediately threatening. She doesn't seduce him quickly. It takes months of careful cultivation, but eventually he yields. Perhaps out of genuine attraction, perhaps out of loneliness, perhaps because Charlotte's performance is simply that good. And once he's involved, she has leverage. The double game. Now Charlotte is maintaining simultaneous affairs with both men, and she uses each against the other brilliantly. When Alasah considers Protestant alliance, Charlotte whispers doubts. The Prince of Navarre doesn't truly respect you. He sees you as a tool. He'll betray you when convenient. When Navarre considers joint conspiracy with Alasah, Charlotte plants suspicion. The Duke is unstable. Desperate. He'll sacrifice you to save himself. She creates jealousy between them. Lets Alasah know she's seen with Navarre. Lets Navarre know Alasah is madly in love with her. Makes them compete, makes them suspicious, makes alliance impossible. The result, two dangerous men, both theoretically allied against Catherine, both unable to trust each other enough to act. Years of potential rebellion wasted in mutual suspicion and competition for Charlotte's affection. The famous incident. In 1575, both Alasah and Navarre are imprisoned by King Charles IX on suspicion of plotting. They're held in the same chambers, forced proximity. And they discover something. They're both in love with the same woman. Charlotte de Sauve. The conversation between them, recorded in memoirs and letters, would be comedy if it weren't so tragic. Two princes, imprisoned together, realizing they've been played by the same female operative. Realizing years of rivalry was manufactured. They laugh. Bitterly. And they wonder, does Charlotte actually love either of them? Or is it all performance? They'll never know. Charlotte never tells. Of course, the operation runs for 12 years. 12 years of Charlotte maintaining 2 simultaneous affairs. 2 men who believe she loves them. 12 years of performance without break. What does this do to a person? We have no direct evidence. Charlotte left no diary, no confessions, no psychological record. But consider, she can never have a genuine relationship. Can never trust her own emotions because she's performed emotions so long the boundary between real and false is gone. Can never retire because both men are still alive, still potentially dangerous, still requiring management. She's trapped in her own success. The most effective operative in Squadron history is also the most imprisoned by her effectiveness. The aftermath. Charlotte continues operating until Catherine's death in 1589. When Henry of Navarre becomes King Henry IV, he's merciful. He doesn't punish her. But he also doesn't reward her. She's not honored, not pensioned generously, not acknowledged for the years of service. She dies in 1617, age 70, relatively poor and completely alone. No husband, the Baron de Sauve died years earlier. No children. No family willing to claim connection to the former Squadron operative. The most dangerous woman in France dies unmourned and largely forgotten. Her obituary mentions her beauty, her court service, nothing else. The secrets die with her. And maybe that's what she wanted. August 18, 1572. Paris is transformed. Banners everywhere. Music in the streets. Thousands of visitors from across France. This should be a celebration, the wedding of Marguerite de Valois, Catherine's daughter, to Henry of Navarre, Protestant prince. A union meant to end the wars of religion. The flying squadron is deployed in full force. Every ball, every gathering, every private meeting, squadron members are present, listening, watching, reporting to Catherine. But something is wrong. Beneath the celebration, there's violence waiting. And the squadron is about to be implicated in the worst massacre in French history. The wedding. The wedding itself is magnificent. Held at Notre Dame Cathedral. Margot in white and gold. Henry in his Protestant plainness, refusing to convert to Catholicism even for the ceremony. Thousands of Protestant nobles have come to Paris for the wedding. All the Huguenot leadership, Admiral Coligny, Louis de Condé's successors, provincial commanders, the entire Protestant political and military elite. They're here because this wedding represents peace. Because Catherine has promised reconciliation. Because they believe, or want to believe, that religious war might finally end. Catherine has spent months encouraging Protestant attendance, promising safety, guaranteeing royal protection, using the squadron to send reassuring messages through intimate channels. And the Protestants came, all of them, gathered in one city, vulnerable. The tension. But Catholic extremists are furious. The Duke of Guise, ultra-Catholic faction leader, is openly hostile to the Protestant presence. His followers are gathering weapons. Paris's Catholic population, whipped up by inflammatory sermons, is increasingly hostile to the Protestant visitors. Catherine meets privately with Catholic leaders. Plans something. The exact nature of these meetings is historically debated, but something is being coordinated. The squadron members sense it. The atmosphere is wrong. When they report their nightly intelligence, who said what, who's allied with whom, they note the tension. The whispered conversations that stop when they approach. The Catholic nobles who are suddenly very interested in where specific Protestant leaders are lodging. The assassination attempt. August 22, 1572. 4 days after the wedding. Admiral Coligny is walking through Paris when someone shoots him from a window. The bullet tears through his arm, hits his hand, but he survives. Protestant nobles are furious. They know this was an assassination attempt, know the shooter was likely connected to the guy's family. They demand justice. They threaten to leave Paris en masse, to resume the war, to take revenge. Catherine faces catastrophe. If the Protestants leave angry, war resumes. If they stay and demand justice, it exposes Catholic complicity. She's losing control. And she makes a decision. A catastrophic, monstrous decision. The planning. Night of August 23, 1572. Catherine meets with King Charles IX. What happens in this meeting is historically disputed, but the result is clear. Charles IX authorizes, or is forced to authorize, the killing of Protestant leadership. Not all Protestants. Just the leaders. The ones who are dangerous. Who could organize resistance. It's supposed to be surgical. Targeted. A political purge disguised as responding to Protestant threats. Lists are made. Addresses. Where specific Protestant nobles are lodging. The information comes from somewhere. From court records. From hospitality arrangements. From people who know where the targets sleep. From the flying squadron? The darkest question. This is where squadron history becomes impossible to disentangle from Massacre. Several Protestant leaders were lodged in houses adjacent to Catholic commanders. Convenient for assassination. Several squadron members were in relationships with Protestant nobles. They knew where their lovers would be sleeping, when they'd be vulnerable. The timing of the massacre, striking at night, in bedrooms, suggests someone knew when targets would be most vulnerable. When they'd be alone, possibly with lovers, in places where intimate companions would know to find them. Did Catherine use the squadron as bait? Did intimate relationships lure Protestant leaders into positions where they could be efficiently murdered? We don't know. The direct evidence is circumstantial. But the questions haunt. Why were so many targets killed in their bedrooms? How did the Catholic militia know exactly where to find them? Who provided the precise intelligence that made the massacre so horrifically efficient? The massacre. August 23 to 24, 1572. St. Bartholomew's Day. At 2 a.m., bells ring across Paris. Not for prayer. For murder. Catholic militia, marked by white crosses on their hats and white armbands, pour into the streets. They have lists, addresses. They go house to house, killing Protestant nobles. The violence that was supposed to be surgical becomes general massacre. The mob joins in. For 3 days, Paris drowns in blood. Admiral Coligny is dragged from his sickbed, stabbed repeatedly, thrown from his window. His body is mutilated by the crowd. Protestant nobles are slaughtered in their lodgings, in their beds, trying to flee. Some squadron members are present when killers arrive. Some hide. Some flee. Some watch their targets die. The estimates vary, 3,000 in Paris. Maybe 10,000 across France as the massacre spreads to other cities. The wars of religion, which the wedding was supposed to end, intensify catastrophically. The squadron in crisis. The psychological impact on squadron members is devastating. They'd seduced these men. Learned their secrets. Shared intimacy. Some had genuine feelings. Now they're watching them die. Hearing their screams. Seeing their blood. Charlotte de Sauve is with Henry of Navarre when assassins come for him. He survives only because he's in the royal palace, married to Margot, under royal protection. But he watches friends murdered. Hears screams. Knows he's only alive by accident of location. The relationship between Charlotte and Henry will never be the same. He knows that she was part of whatever machinery made this possible. But he can't prove it. And he still needs to survive in Catherine's court. Other squadron members aren't so lucky. Some were with targets when killers came. Some tried to protect lovers and were threatened themselves. Some did nothing, watched, frozen, as men they'd known intimately were butchered. The squadron's reputation is permanently destroyed. They're no longer just spies. They're potential accomplices to mass murder. And no one who survived that night will ever trust them, or themselves, again. 2 years after St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, the flying squadron still exists officially, but it's fundamentally broken. Several members have withdrawn, entered convents, retired to country estates, disappeared from historical record. Some are dead, natural deaths that might not be natural. Childbirth complications, sudden illnesses, convenient accidents. The survivors are different, harder, colder, or more fragile, depending. The work continues, but the psychological casualties mount. The damaged. Marie Touchet was mistress to King Charles IX, technically not Squadron, but part of Catherine's network. When Charles dies in 1574, she's immediately discarded, sent from court, denied access to her son, Charles's illegitimate child. She spends the rest of her life in obscurity, watching her child raised by others, never acknowledged by the royal family, the years of service and intimacy meaning nothing once the king who valued her is gone. Louise de la Barradière was one of the squadron's most successful early operatives. Multiple targets, multiple extracted secrets, years of effective service. But after St. Bartholomew's, she breaks. She requests release from squadron service. Catherine refuses. Louise knows too much, has too many contacts, can't be allowed to simply retire. Louise attempts suicide by poison. She survives, but damaged. Spends years confined in a convent, for her own protection, Catherine says. For imprisonment, Louise knows. She eventually dies there, having spent the last decade of her life isolated, possibly insane, destroyed by work that required more psychological resilience than any human actually possesses. The unnamed women. The sources mention squadron members by title only: the Countess of X, the daughter of Y. Women whose names weren't important enough to preserve but whose service and suffering was real. How many of them died young? How many entered convents by choice versus coercion? How many were retired when they became security risks or psychological liabilities? We'll never have a complete casualty list. But we know the squadron hemorrhaged members after St. Bartholomew's. Between those who died, those who retired, and those who simply broke, Catherine's network was decimated. Charlotte's endurance. Charlotte de Sauve continues operating. She's the exception, the operative who doesn't break, doesn't retire, doesn't collapse psychologically. But that itself is concerning. Because either Charlotte is psychologically exceptional, capable of performing intimacy for years without it affecting her, or she's damaged in ways that aren't externally visible. She maintains her relationships with Alassa and Navarre. Still reports to Catherine. Still extracts intelligence. Still performs love while feeling. What? Nothing? Everything? She leaves no record of her interior life. Contemporary observers note she becomes harder over the years. More brittle. Less convincing in her performances because the warmth is gone, replaced by mechanical efficiency. But she's still effective. Still useful. So Catherine keeps deploying her. The question of consent. Looking back from 1574, we must ask, did these women choose this? Catherine's recruitment pitch claimed they were volunteers, patriots serving France. But examine the power dynamics. How many were daughters of minor nobility desperate for royal favor? How many were orphans raised at court with no other options? How many were widows with no financial security except through royal patronage? When the Queen Mother invites your daughter to serve, what happens if you refuse? Can you refuse? Or does refusal mean loss of position, exclusion from court, Financial ruin? Some squadron members, like Charlotte, seem to have embraced the work. But others? The ones who broke, who died young, who tried to escape. They might have been coerced. Not explicitly, not through direct threats, but through the structural violence of a system where women had no power except through male favor, and Catherine controlled access to that favor. The psychological profile. Modern intelligence services recognize that deep cover operatives who maintain intimate relationships suffer specific psychological damage. Identity confusion, performing love so often you forget what genuine feeling is. Trust issues, everyone becomes a potential target or threat. Emotional numbing, protecting yourself from attachment by suppressing all emotion. Hypervigilance, constantly watching, calculating, never relaxing. Moral injury, the trauma of doing things that violate your own ethical code. The flying squadron experienced all of this. But in the 16th century, there was no psychological support, no debriefing, no recognition that the work caused damage. You either endured or you broke. And if you broke, you were discarded. The Salon of Ghosts. In the late 1570s and 1580s, surviving squadron members sometimes gather. Officially, these are social occasions, ladies of the court meeting for conversation and entertainment. But watch closer. Listen to what's not said. These women share something no one else can understand. They've all sacrificed in ways that can't be acknowledged. They've all performed intimacy professionally. They've all watched targets die or been abandoned by men they'd served. They sit in beautiful rooms, wearing expensive clothes, smelling of expensive perfumes. And they drink more than is ladylike. And they smile too little. And their eyes are old. They're ghosts. Beautiful, expensively dressed ghosts. Haunting the court that destroyed them while pretending to honor them. January 5, 1589. Catherine de' Medici dies at age 69. She's outlived 4 of her children, Francis II, Charles IX, both dead. Henry III, her favorite, is king but will die the same year. Only Margot survives her. She's survived 5 wars of religion. She's maintained power for 30 years through intelligence, manipulation, and ruthlessness. The flying squadron dies with her. No subsequent French ruler attempts to recreate it. The experiment is over. The death. Catherine dies at Blois Castle, not Paris. She's been ill for weeks, pleurisy, possibly lung cancer. Even dying, she's scheming. Her final letters concern negotiations between her son Henry III and the Catholic League. She's trying to broker peace until her last breath. When death comes, it comes without ceremony that marked her life. She's buried in St. Denis, royal necropolis. But her funeral is small, rushed. Her son Henry III is fighting for his throne, has no time for elaborate mourning. The woman who dominated French politics for 3 decades gets a funeral that's barely remembered. The squadron dissolves. Without Catherine, there's no one to run the network. No one to protect the operatives. No one to provide the infrastructure that made the squadron function. Some women marry quietly, finding minor nobles willing to overlook their reputations in exchange for Catherine's remaining patronage, executed by executors of her will. Some enter convents. Whether by choice, by necessity, or by coercion, we often can't determine. Some simply disappear from historical record. One entry in a census or tax record, then nothing. Their ends unknown, their fates unrecorded. The immediate judgment. Contemporary reaction to Catherine's death is almost uniformly hostile. Catholic propagandists celebrate. She was the Italian serpent, the Machiavellian manipulator, the poisoner. She probably did use poison, but less often than reputation suggests. She corrupted French nobility with Italian vice. Protestant writers condemn her as architect of St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. She lured Protestant leaders to Paris and orchestrated their slaughter. She's a mass murderer. Both sides use the flying squadron as evidence of her depravity. What Christian queen runs a network of seductresses? What moral woman weaponizes sexuality? The squadron becomes proof of Catherine's corruption. Henry IV's silence. Henry of Navarre becomes King Henry IV in 1589. The Protestant prince, former squadron target, former Charlotte de Sauve's lover, now rules France. He establishes religious tolerance through the Edict of Nantes, 1598. He ends the wars of religion. He rebuilds France into a prosperous, stable kingdom. But he never acknowledges the squadron, never rewards surviving members, never publicly discusses the intelligence network that shaped his own life. Is this mercy, refusing to expose women who served Catherine? Or is it erasure, denying that women influenced history, that female intelligence work mattered? Probably both. Henry understands the squadron was effective, but acknowledging it would mean admitting he was manipulated, controlled, deceived by women for years. His masculine pride won't allow it. So the squadron is forgotten. Officially. The historical debate. Over 4 centuries, historians have argued about Catherine and her squadron. The traditional condemnation, 16th to 19th centuries, Catherine was depraved. Using women's sexuality as political weapon was inherently corrupt. The squadron represented moral decay. She sacrificed women's virtue and honor for power. This interpretation assumes 1. Women's sexuality is inherently shameful. 2. Political power through intimacy is worse than political power through violence. 3. Catherine was uniquely evil rather than uniquely documented. The pragmatic defense. 20th century Catherine did what was necessary with tools available. She couldn't command armies. She lacked noble support. The squadron was improvisation, using the one arena where women had influence for political ends. This interpretation asks, was the squadron worse than male intelligence operations? Male spies also used seduction. Male diplomats arranged marriages as political tools. Why is Catherine judged more harshly? The feminist complication. Late 20th to 21st century, some feminist historians claim the squadron as proto-feminist, women exercising agency, using sexuality strategically rather than being passive objects. But other feminists counter. The squadron reinforced patriarchal structures. It argued women's only value is sexual. It required women to destroy each other, competing for the same targets, to serve male power structures. Catherine was serving her son's interests, ultimately. Both feminist readings are partially true and partially false. The squadron was simultaneously empowering and exploitative, strategic and degrading. The modern parallel. Intelligence services today still use honey traps. The methods Catherine pioneered are still employed. Russia's Sparrow program trained women in seduction for espionage, inspiration for the 2018 movie Red Sparrow. Israel's Mossad has used sexual intelligence operations. CIA operations have included romantic relationships for intelligence gathering. The technology changes. The fundamental methods don't. Because human vulnerability doesn't change. People still tell lovers things they tell no one else. Intimacy still creates leverage. Catherine invented a tool that proved too effective to abandon. The unanswerable question. Was Catherine de' Medici evil? She used women as instruments. She orchestrated, or allowed, mass murder. She sacrificed hundreds of lives, squadron members and their targets, for political objectives. But she also prevented worse civil wars. Her intelligence network stopped some massacres, prevented some foreign invasions, bought time that allowed eventual religious tolerance. She operated in a world where women had almost no official power. She improvised methods that gave her influence impossible through traditional channels. She was ruthless, But every successful political leader is ruthless. The question is whether her ruthlessness was worse than alternatives. And that question has no objective answer. It depends on your values, your priorities, your judgment of what kinds of sacrifice are acceptable for what kinds of outcomes. The final assessment. Catherine de' Medici created the flying squadron because she understood power. Information is a weapon. Control information flow, and you control events. She couldn't command armies, so she built a network of intelligent, beautiful women who extracted secrets through intimate relationships. Was it moral? By modern standards, though. The squadron involved coercion, psychological damage, sacrifice of women's well-being for political gain. Was it effective? Absolutely. The squadron was Catherine's most valuable intelligence asset for 3 decades. It prevented conspiracies, disrupted alliances, extracted information that shaped French politics. Was it different from what male rulers did? Only in method, not in ruthlessness. Men sacrificed soldiers. Catherine sacrificed reputations. Men used violence. Catherine used intimacy. The body count was different, but the calculations were the same. The final words. History remembers Catherine as the Black Queen. The poisoner. The witch. The woman who wore mourning black for 30 years and stained France with blood. But she was also one of the most effective intelligence operators in European history. She created an espionage system that nearly saved France from civil war and definitely prevented worse catastrophes. The cost was measured in ruined lives, psychological casualties, moral compromise. Squadron members who died young, who broke psychologically, who spent decades performing emotion until they forgot what genuine feeling was. Was it worth it? Catherine would say yes. She'd say she saved more lives than she destroyed. She'd say the squadron prevented worse violence. She'd say she did what was necessary with tools available. The squadron members, the ones who survived, the ones who broke, the ones who died, they might have different answers. But we'll never know. They left no collective testimony, no manifesto, no justification or condemnation. Only the historical record. Only the results. Only the stories that survived for centuries. Welcome to the Forbidden Archives, where the question isn't whether Catherine did terrible things. She did. The question is whether we can understand why, and what that understanding reveals about power, gender, and survival in a world that gave women almost no official power and demanded they use unofficial channels to matter. The flying squadron is gone. Catherine is dead. The wars of religion ended. But the methods she pioneered? They're still used. Because the fundamental calculation hasn't changed. Information is power. Vulnerability can be exploited. And sometimes the most effective intelligence operation isn't stealing documents. It's stealing hearts.